I'm super pumped to have you on the show today. It has been a long time coming. Why don't we just start? I told the audience a little bit about you, but let's just back it up a little bit and you tell the audience where you're from. Tell us about your childhood memories, kind of your upbringing in the money world.
Lauryn, thank you for having me. I'm so pumped to be here. This is gonna be a long story if we're starting with my childhood.
We are.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a normal kid. I grew up in Michigan, middle class, maybe upper middle class. Like my parents weren't rich, but we definitely I went to a good public school, not a bad public school. So that was nice.
What part of Michigan?
Southeast Michigan, outside of Detroit, Bloomfield, then Ann Arbor.
I have some Detroit roots.
Do you?
I do.
Oh, what are they?
I was there from kindergarten until 6th grade. My mom was born and raised in Detroit.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Maybe where like in the city?
In the city. West side.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I saw you there when we were little kids.
Okay, Bloomfield Hills. I know. I went off on a tangent. My bad.
Yeah. Then I went to college. I ran track like you, which is why I'm a big fan of yours. And then graduated and I turned down a job offer from Microsoft. They were going to hire me to be a software engineer, which is very nice, but I didn't really want to work for a big company. So instead I started my own company. I grew that from the age of 21 until 34 when I sold it for just over $5 million. And then I retired at the age of 36. That's my story in a nutshell.
That is in a nutshell. So this is why you all should tune in for this whole episode. Jeremy's trying to give us the quick and down dirty version, but we're going to back it up a little bit. So from Michigan, do you have siblings?
I do. 2 parents, 1 older brother. My brother was not an athlete. Parents both were computer nerds. And so like we're all kind of computer nerds in my family. And
so what is your first memory of money?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. My first memory of money. I think it's just my dad being extremely frugal. Maybe I remember being in like 4th grade or something and all the kids getting like the Reebok pumps and like the Nike, like the Jordans. And my parents said that you cannot spend more than $40 on shoes. And I think this was the first time that I think I obviously was aware of money at that point, but they said $40 was your maximum you could spend on shoes. And so then but I really wanted to be cool. And so I found these like really discounted Nikes that were $40. They were like pink and green. They're just like these, I didn't even like the look of them. They looked terrible. But I had to have the Nike Airs or whatever. And then I wore them to school and then I got made fun of for having ugly shoes. And I was like, come on, man. I was rummaging through the discount bin to find like the only Nike Airs on the planet under $40.
Right.
I mean, the lesson there is I probably should just worn whatever shoes I liked and just owned it. But that's really hard to do as a 4th grader.
That is very hard with the pressures of other children haggling you constantly. But it taught you probably some lessons about budgeting too. Like, oh, okay, like this is what's available in this price range.
Totally. I think that my parents had set a standard of frugality from the beginning that we just didn't, just because the other kids had Jordans. I didn't also get, I think I'd probably be a different person if they'd be like, whatever shoes you want, go nuts. Let's just burn money, And, they did, they were never super duper wealthy, but they did well because they spent less money than they made. They didn't spend crazy amounts of money on children's shoes.
Right. How were they talking to you about money? Was that something that you and your brother, you said, right?
Yeah. 1 older brother.
Was there an allowance or a setup, or did you have to watch them do the checkbook, or what kind of things were happening in the household as it pertains to what you remember?
Yeah. Frugality was definitely the big one. My parents eventually got divorced and I would go to my dad's house, alternating weekends or whatever. And whenever I got there, he would unplug the alarm clock in my bedroom, like the LED alarm clock that uses like a penny of electricity a year. He would unplug it to save electricity. I've never told this story before. And I would get so mad at him. And to this day, I'm still mad at him. I think that is absurd. That's beyond the pale. I was I was 15 at this point. I was I will give you $5. That will power this LED alarm clock for the next 1,000 years So I don't have to, because this was back in like the 90s when it wasn't like there's no iPhones. You had to sit there and like press minute, hour.
Right.
Like every single time I went over that, I had to like, because it would blink 12 and then I had to wake up at like 6 a.m. for school. It was like so annoying. So, I think maybe he went a little too far with frugality, but that was like the main message growing up.
Do you feel like you inherited the frugality to a certain extent?
I think I hopefully got the best of both worlds because I still am very frugal. I don't like spend excessively, but I also think that I learned that like there's a limit and that it's okay.
You're not unplugging the alarm clock.
I'm not unplugging my alarm clock to save like 10 cents on electric bill because it's just like, especially and also like I think that in all honesty, like that one story among others like kind of fractured the relationship a little bit with my father, and like, was it worth it to him? Was that 10 cents worth it? Like, I don't think so, so that, at some point there's things that are more important than money,
I love it. More important than money. Hang that up, write it down, get your notes going. Let's get this going. All right. What about a first job?
So my first job was at Roper Summer Day Camp in Southeast Michigan in Birmingham. And I worked there. I think I was 15 and I worked for the summer. I think I made like $1,200. And actually, this is a story I do tell more often, which is when I got that job, my dad, the frugal one, very cleverly opened up a Roth IRA in my name because the rule of the Roth IRA is you can't contribute more money than you actually earn. And so the first time that I actually had earned income and I was going to like be paying taxes, my dad basically matched that $1,200, all that savings from the alarm clock energy, obviously, and put it into my Roth IRA and told me about it. He said, this is a Roth IRA. These are mutual funds. We like chose some mutual funds. I didn't really understand what or why, but I just thought that was part of the growing up process. You learn how to pick your mutual funds. And then like when I was 30 and I started talking to my friends about this, and I was like, hey, what are your mutual funds? Most often the response I got was like, what are you talking about? Like, what's a Roth IRA? What's a mutual fund? Like, what is all this stuff? And so I definitely was like very fortunate from that perspective to like get in on investing awareness very early.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, as we talk about like education, I mean, let's fast forward a little bit to, you said you went to college. Was there a conversation about you have to go to college? That's the next step after high school, how we're going to pay for it, that they saved up? Did you have to take out student loans? What was that kind of thought process? Because that's kind of like the first round of adulting for a lot of people.
Yeah. It is a crazy time when you're just kind of like living at home under your parents' wing, your whole life. And then it's all of a sudden it's like, all right, leave. Go both like financially, physically, emotionally, maybe, go be on your own. So my mom always told me you have to do these three things in order: graduate from college, get married, have babies. She's like, those three
non-negotiable.
There's no other order which is acceptable. I graduate from college and I've not yet gotten married or had babies. And so I'm still on pace.
In the clear.
And now as a 41-year-old, I think my mom is probably just whatever, like, have babies, knock up some chick you just met, whatever.
Right. Give me grandbabies.
Right.
I meant what I said.
Yeah, exactly. I just didn't want like a 17-year-old with babies. That was what I was worried about. So I went to college. My parents, like I said, we were kind of upper middle class. I was very, very fortunate that they had saved money for college. I also ran track and ended up getting like a partial track scholarship. And so between those two things, I graduated with my undergrad debt-free, and then I got a teaching job and got my master's degree in computer science and had that paid for with the being a graduate student instructor. And so, I basically graduated with a master's degree in computer science from the University of Michigan with not only no debt, but I actually had about a $6,000 surplus. And so insanely fortunate, like I won the birth jackpot. I was born in the US. I'm tall. I'm a dude. I'm white. I, had upper middle class parents. Like every like thing that can correlate with success. Not that it's fair. It's absolutely not fair, but like I definitely, have privilege out the wazoo.
I would say $6,000 coming out of college is a win, but especially when so many people are finishing colleges with debt. But now the landscape is changing for a lot of people too. And able to finish college with a lot of money in the pocket if they've learned, like you said, good financial literacy along the way, because there's, various different ways to earn or to save up or to keep, refunds and things like that. So like, I feel like the broke college student is going away, and that there's this new, financially savvy, financially literate, or, maybe just like not millions of dollars coming out of college, but having that $6,000 is a little bit more normal, as opposed to like it being an exception to the rule.
I'm glad to hear you think that. Like I definitely think that still people are burying themselves in debt, but definitely I think awareness is getting better. I think college used to be really cheap, so it wasn't really a big deal. Then college got super, super expensive, and people, especially right before the Great Recession, people were graduating with like massive amounts of debt, and then they couldn't get jobs and got put in this really bad situation. And now that we're like talking a lot more about how to pay for college, how not to borrow for college, things like that, even though it's still outrageously expensive.
Yeah, the outrageously expensive is the thing that we really got to figure out. But and the graduate degrees, I think, are what are burying people in debt. But there's some good stories I've heard from undergraduates lately that seems like that part of the landscape is changing. A secondary degree, I got nothing for you.
That's awesome. Thanks to people like you who are talking about, which is like why we do this.
People like us that are talking about it.
That's right.
Yes.
I didn't want to give myself too much credit because I don't think I'm really saving any college kids, but I try. I do the math on how much they have to pay for it if they take out loans. It's pretty rough.
All right. So computer science. And then you did also mention that you had a job at Microsoft, or, you offered a job at Microsoft, but you didn't take it. So wait, actually, before I even go there, teaching job. So teaching is a very, blue collar, I guess, in terms of like how people think of like the income related to teaching. What was it like getting your first teaching job? What did you know about money? How were you trying to organize yourself amidst whatever kind of income you had in that first job?
So I taught at the University of Michigan as a graduate student. And so it wasn't like a public school teacher or something.
Gotcha.
And also I had lived 4 years as like a broke college kid, despite having like tuition largely paid for. I didn't have any extra money. And so I was living like, still ramen, and I'd shop at Meijer, and I like wouldn't buy anything over $1 because I like couldn't afford it. And so like I was living very, very cheap for a while. And then in grad school, tuition was now paid for. And then they were giving me a stipend of like $3,000 a month or something like that. So like every 2 months or every 2 weeks, I get $1,500. And like, I like had never, to this day, I had never felt so rich as like that year where I was like, getting, cause I went from like just the dramatic contrast between like having to like, pay for everything and pay for tuition to like free tuition and getting paid was, yeah. So despite not, really having a big income, it definitely felt, but I think it speaks to the frugality, which is, I think people often have like, their lifestyle creep happens so quickly when they get the next paycheck. They're like, "Ooh, I got $1,500. Let's go get a car loan. Let's go to Best Buy. Let's like get a nicer apartment, whatever." Whereas I stayed at the same standard of living and then just like felt super, super rich.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So that kind of like set the groundwork maybe for like overall, like your financial strategy, and like kind of, well, you said your parents also spent less than they earned. And so you had good foundation put in place in that regard.
Yeah. And I think I went from that straight to starting a company where I also had no money. And so for, my whole life until I was basically 34 years old, I had almost no money. I think I was living about at the poverty line at 34. And so the roots of frugality still run deep with me.
Okay. So give us the rundown then. You start a company and you get rich. That's what you told us at the beginning of the story, but yeah. Let's pause there for a second to break it down a little bit.
There's a yada, yada, yada in the middle there that took some work.
Just give us a little bit of that yada, yada, yada. What kind of company? How did you get it going? And yeah.
So it's an internet company. I sold a website to my former landlord. He had this terrible website, and I was just trying to start a company and was hungry for work. And so I made him this website without asking, and I emailed it to him. He didn't respond. And then like, despite being like cripplingly shy, I picked up the phone and called him and said, "Did you see this website?" He said, "No." And I said, "Would you mind taking a look?" And he said, "Sure." And then he bought it. He bought it for like $3,000 or $2,000 and $300 a month or something like that. Like I charged him some, he like asked on that very first phone call, like, "How much does it cost?" And I didn't even think, like, I was just trying to get him on the phone. I didn't even think to like make up a price yet. And so I like made up a price on the spot, and he said yes. And so, and so that kind of morphed into an internet company where we did rental housing advertising. So if you're a landlord and you want to post to apartments.com and Zillow and rentals.com and apartment guide. And there's like 50 of these apartment sites out there. I made a website called Rent Links, RENTLINX, where you can post once and automatically feed all 50 of those sites. And yeah, it took the first year in business, my top line revenue was $14,000. And so, that's before expenses were even taken out. And so it wasn't nearly enough to even, pay rent or anything. And so I lived on credit cards the first year. I racked up $10,000 in credit card debt just to like live at the super, super baseline level of like, water and pasta and $400 a month of renting a room in my buddy's house. And then the second year, my credit card debt got up to $12,000. I kept doing like 0% APR transfers to try not pay interest, but I had to keep using it to eat. And then by the third year, I think we made like 40,000 or something like that. And then I was able to like write myself a check for the $12,000 and pay off all my credit card debt. So yeah, meager beginnings.
Okay, so let's talk about what you would say to someone who is investing in themselves right now. Because it sounds like you said you invested in yourself and like, it didn't go well the first year. And some people on the outside looking in, I think I've heard lots of, stories or narratives or like, so-and-so is living in their basement and doing this. And they got, this really high credit card debt, or, you go out to a thing and you might've went to a dinner with a friend and said like, yeah, I'm racking up this debt and I just can't make it. Like someone probably said like, stop, don't do this. Like you suck at this. It's 2 years in and you didn't do any better. And here you are in the third year before you make money. What do you say to the person on the other end who's doing something similar right now? How do you know when you believe in yourself versus when you need to give it up and try something different?
That's a hard question, right? I think that's like the question that like venture capitalists are trying to answer. Like, what's the difference between a crackpot and someone that used to be considered a crackpot because they turned out to be right or whatever. And it's hard to know that about yourself too. And so, I mean, I'll only answer for me, which is I was never just like takes money to make money. Like I'm going to like go buy branded t-shirts and go fly to conferences. And like, I was like, trying to make money and spend less than I made like the whole way. And I also had a backup plan. Like I was still, I still had a computer science degree. I still could have gotten a job. And so I was planning to, if this didn't work out, I was going to go get a job and just pay off the debt as soon as I could. And so I was never just being like totally reckless without regards to like the real world. But then the flip side of the coin, one of my favorite sayings is that overnight success takes about a decade. If it doesn't work the first month, like you're normal because it never works the first month. It takes years of grinding and improving and iterating and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and persistence. And in those years, there are always dark days. Like, entrepreneurship is this emotional roller coaster where, like after I made that first sale, I was like $300 a month. I'm a genius. Like if I sell 10 of these, I'm going to be rich. And then for the next 2 months, I probably made 0 sales. And I was like, oh, that was just one crazy person who didn't know any better, who paid me money, but I can't live on $300 a month. Like this was a terrible idea. I'm never going to make another sale. And so there are always those kinds of dark days. And the only way to get through it is just, this like unrelenting persistence.
I love it. I know I did throw you a hard one there. It's like, Lauryn, answer all the problems of the world. It's like, it doesn't work like that in entrepreneurship. Some people get it and some people don't.
Right. And there's luck involved too, like there's this alternate timeline where like, we're not on this podcast because I did just go crawl back to Microsoft and beg for a job. And, and I think every entrepreneur like admits that there's a lot of luck involved, but the ones who get lucky are the ones that keep persisting and putting themselves in a position to eventually get lucky when that opportunity arises.
All right. So you said year 3, you made like 40 grand. And I think at the beginning of the story, you said 5 years in is when you sold the business.
No, it was 10 or 11 years in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I got it wrong. So give us the Cliff Notes version of what happened over the next set of years and then the sale and how we got to where we are today. Yeah.
It was just grinding. Like every year we would just try to do a little better. We'd keep expanding the business. We'd get more clients. We released a new, we were originally doing more like website design stuff. Then we switched to more of that advertising model I talked about. And, then it started to go better and better. And then by the 10th year, we did about $1 million in sales. And that was just, over the course of 10 years, ramping up a little bit. There's never we never really blew up necessarily. But $1 million in sales is now it's like a legitimate small business. And then this other company came along and they really liked the technology we had built and they wanted to buy it. And the problem is like we had made $1 million in sales, but we had spent about $975,000 in salaries and expenses and advertising and all that other stuff. And so like our profit was only $25,000. And when you acquire a company, you're generally acquiring it for the profit, right? Like if the company is losing money, then the company, you don't want to buy that company. But since we were a tech company and the world is kind of crazy right now with tech, we were very fortunate. Instead of paying us a multiple of the profit, they paid us a multiple of the revenue. And so instead of getting like 5 times 25,000, which would be 125,000, which was like a traditional value of the company, they gave us 5 times $1 million, which is $5 million, which is how I made a lot of money at 34.
That is an interesting story. So I think, you just nailed down on something that's really important, like this 5 times profit. Like so many people are interested in the space of like, how do companies get acquired? What is a startup actually? What does this mean? People are trying to start business so that they can sell the business, but you just shared something that was really important. The idea of like selling based on or having a valuation based on profit versus having a valuation based on revenue and what people are looking at as it pertains to what is a successful company. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So you get offered $5 million for this company. Is this you, or is this you and a set of people at this point that, get this buyout?
So when I, like in my second or third year, my mom, who is now also has a degree in computer science from the University of Michigan, strangely enough, back from the 70s when not a lot of women had computer science degrees, believe it or not. She had like quit her previous job and she was doing okay with money, but wasn't like retired yet. And so I actually brought her on as a partner and I sold her 30% of the company for $1,500 because we were like, had no money. And so I gave her like, there's like $3,000 in the bank account or whatever. And so she paid for her share of it or whatever it was. And so
she's like an angel investor before angel investor was a term.
Yeah, I guess, except she didn't pay any money, like any real money. She just like got it for the book value of what the cash in the bank. But she came, the difference from an angel investor was that she was working. She was going to work full time with the company. And so we were partners from that point forward, and I owned 70% and she owned 30%. We never took any other outside funding or capital or anything like that. Never took a loan, just purely lived on less than we made. And so then when we sold, we did have 5 employees when we sold. So there's 7 of us, and all the 5 employees, we gave what we call this kind of like phantom stock, where they got a share of the sale without actually having to be on the taxes and stuff. And so when we sold, I owned 70% of the company. So my share was about $3 million. I sent $1 million to the government that year in taxes. And then, so I walked away with $2 million in my checking account after the sale.
So prior to getting that $2 million check, were you like 100,000 there, a 10,000 there? Like,
so yeah, it's a good point. Cause
okay?
Right now, what I talk about, like my new phase of my career is I talk about like financial literacy and investing. And a lot of people, make the very fair critique, which is like, oh, you sold a tech company for millions. And so that's easy. I was like, well, what I did before, during, and after was I've basically followed my 2 rules of building wealth, which is rule number 1, live below your means. And rule number 2, invest early and often. And so during the entirety of the time I was growing my company, my max take-home salary was $36,000 a year. I never made more than $36,000. All of my employees made more than me. The day we sold the company, I was driving a 99 Ford Explorer Sport. It's a 2-door SUV. It's a perfect blend.
What year was it that you sold the company?
I sold it in 2015. So it was a 16-year-old car. It was a real old car. I bought it for $3,000, and that was 6 years earlier or whatever. I was living with roommates or a roommate, renting, never owned a property. But every year of my $36,000, I would invest about $5,000. I would live on $30,000 or so and invest $5,000. And so, not counting the value of the company, which had no real value until the day I sold it, my net worth was about $120,000 at 34, which like obviously isn't like wildly impressive or anything, but making $36,000 a year. I live in San Diego, pretty high cost of living here.
Wildly impressive.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I would have been a millionaire either way, even not making any more money just from letting those investments continue to grow. I just got kind of fast forwarded that day.
All right. I am so fascinated. That in and of itself, like $36,000, even while building this business, a 1999 car. So I'm driving a 2008.
Are
Honda.
you?
Yes.
I mean, what is that? Now it's a 14-year-old car. It's almost the same, like relative to the year.
Right. And my employees do make more than me. So I just got 2 years
I love it.
if I follow your plan before I'm a millionaire, or I can sell my business for millions of dollars. Right.
I mean, I would believe it based on the way they're doing things. I mean, the wealthy, I mean, before we started, we were talking about how we're both on, like, my computer is a 2014, yours is 2015. So we both have like these 7 or 8 year old computers. Cause I think that's how wealthy people operate. You know, wealth is what's left over after you spend the money, not the spending itself.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to a good segue of, the idea of, you said spend less than you earn as one of your main principles. And then also, invest early, invest often. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. Go.
Sorry. I don't want to answer this.
It's probably a telemarketer.
Yeah, I'm so annoyed. Actually, like, normally before podcasts, I have like this little on-air thing that I put, but like because I had the time wrong, I forgot to like do my whole setup. And of course, some guy's ringing the doorbell. But maybe we can.
The dog's not barking though. He's definitely thinking about it.
Scooch is the perfect dog. He knows when I'm on a podcast.
He's like, Dad, the door. But okay.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. He's going away. Good. All right. Sorry about that. Maybe you could give me that segue again.
That is why editing is great. Oh, I got to do this for the video person. I got video editor and audio editor at this point. All right, let's see. I think that creates a perfect segue for us to be able to talk about these two principles that you mentioned. Spend less than you earn. There it is. And then invest early, invest often. But also, like you said, you got this $1 million or this $2 million buyout, but you didn't stop working. So you currently have something that you're doing. Tell us all about it and tell us how those two things play into it.
Yeah, well, when I made my money, I, didn't have a lot of money before then. And so I really wanted to be like a good steward of this money. And so I started reading like every book I could on personal finance and investing. And I realized that they all basically say the exact same thing. They say, spend less than you make, invest the difference, generally to buy and hold index funds, minimize your fees and buy for the long term, and don't speculate on, trends and, buy and hold. And so but you don't hear a lot about that in pop culture. I feel like if you just, maybe you and I do, because like we live in this world a bit more, but like, if you're just like at the bar on a random day, it's going to be like Dogecoin and crypto, and the economy is going to tank because of like instability in Russia, and so everyone feels like they should be making moves, which I think is like almost counter to building wealth. And so I did quit my job 2 years after I sold the company, and then I took a year off and basically did nothing, and then I decided to start working on my hobby, the thing that I love, which very just strangely is this personal finance thing. I just love talking about it. I love helping people with money. I love figuring it out. I love educating. And so I started Personal Finance Club, where we talk about those two rules and just, because investing can be a very scary space. The first time people dip a toe in investing, I think there are like images of Wall Street day traders like frantically waving white pieces of paper over their head. And they think that's what trading is, or like I said, like crypto or pork belly futures or options trading. And there's all this scary stuff out there, but like, it's all speculation noise. That's not even what investing is. Investing is just buying and holding assets that provide income and go up in value over long periods of time.
Ooh, I love it. You summarized it so nicely, like well articulated about what investing is. And I think you also brought up a really good point about the idea that there's so much noise, there's so many different narratives. But if you read 5 books and they all say the same thing, it's not because you didn't find the right book that's going to make you rich. It's because they all say the same thing, because that same thing works. And it's tried and true over and over again. There's so many different examples of just do this and you can, in fact, have wealth versus, making poor decisions and then feeling like you need to get rich quick and make the overnight buck, and then kind of, constantly failing at that over time and not ever having that pan out per se. So, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it pains me because like whenever I talk to someone who like has a deep knowledge of this space, they sound like you do, and they sound like I do. But when you talk to someone who's getting into it for the first time, they think there should be a shortcut. Like, oh, there's got to be the next crypto. There's got to be the next options day trading trick or something. But like you said, if you keep doing that, you're going to find yourself 10, 20 years later still broke and missed out on this like massive opportunity of getting started earlier and building real wealth over that time.
Yes. It is not sexy, but it works. So what would you say to someone who has experienced a financial failure of some sort, is maybe not in a good financial situation right now, about how to approach and rebound? And have you ever suffered, maybe you can think of something that you kind of you considered a financial failure, or something that you weren't necessarily proud of or wanted to do different?
I'd say you're normal. I mean, like every person makes mistakes. I mean, like just a week ago or something, I'm 41 years old. My net worth now is like $4.5 million. I run successful companies. And a week ago, I got a letter from the IRS that my tax payment balance like overdrew my checking account because I had like scheduled this tax payment. And, to me now, it's not a big deal in my life. Like I just made that tax payment because I had the money. It was just in the wrong account or whatever. But like it still was a fuck up. Like I didn't mean to do that. I just didn't like take care of my shit correctly. Back in the day where I made like worse mistakes, there's one time where I was stock picking and I thought that Sears Canada was going to be a good stock to buy because like they had gone down like massively and like, oh, they're undervalued and people are still going to want to shop there because like people love Canada or Sears in Canada. And so I put $10,000 in Sears Canada. I mean, this is still kind of like a rich guy problem, I know, but like I put $10,000 in Sears Canada and then it dropped again in half. I was like, this is an even better buying opportunity. So I put $10,000 more and then it went out of business. I lost $20,000. So, again, these are actually both post selling my company where I had that kind of money to play around. But like, I was like I said, I was living on credit cards for years. And so everyone makes money mistakes. Like there's no one, it's a very, very complex landscape. There's no one that like navigates it perfectly. But I'd say like the goal has to be just to like, take the next step and like do the next thing right. So if you are like in crippling debt, focus on that. Say, okay, what's my number one worst debt? Like, how can I get rid of that one? Then you work on your number 2 debt. You work on your number 3 debt. If you're debt free, but you've never learned about investing, like, okay, it's not time to start going crazy and start speculating, but start like learning. How can you like understand it so you can get started? Wherever you are, just like think about taking that next step and like, don't beat yourself up for not, I think every single person I've ever talked to basically thinks they're behind. One time I was like, I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, I'm so far behind. I don't like know how to invest. And like I barely have anything saved. And I'm like, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 23. I was like, fuck you, behind. You're 23. Oh my God, 23. I was like, I blocked them on Instagram. Like, don't even talk to them. No, I'm just kidding. I helped them. But I mean, it just goes to show like, cause like from our perspective, I think you're a little younger than me. How old are you?
38.
38. Yeah. So you're 3 years younger than me, but like from our perspective, like, how 23 is like a baby, like you're not even starting it, but 23-year-olds think like, man, I've already been through college. I'm an adult. How come I don't know all this stuff? Like, everyone. And of course, even 40-year-olds who say they're getting started, it's like, hey, if you're 40 and you look at like the actuarial tables, like you probably have 45 years plus of life left, And so it's a great time to get started and have a great financial 45 years ahead of you. You don't want to start when you're 60 and then you really have trouble.
Right. The more time that passes, the harder it is, but it does not mean it's too late to get going. At any point you can start doing damage control and get on the right path.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I got one more question before we get to our final sprint, is what I like to call our last little round.
I like it.
What does your portfolio look like now?
It's index funds and a little bit of real estate. So I have, most of my money is in a taxable brokerage account just because I made all my money at the same time. And so I couldn't fill up 401ks over the course of 20 years or whatever. I just got paid all at once on that day. And so probably 95% of my money is in a taxable brokerage account. It's in ETFs, like the total US stock market ETF, the total international stock market ETF, and some bonds. I know it's so boring. Although, I have about 5 or 6 ETFs because I did like a small cap ETF and I did like a California municipal bond. But then I actually did a backwards look at my portfolio and I compared it to like, what if I just put 100% of my portfolio in a single target date index fund? The target date index fund actually would have done better. And so even though like I'm an expert, I literally get like quoted in newspapers, financial expert, I've like carefully chosen these like clever little ETFs. I still would have done better with like the most simple possible investment, which is a target date index fund. And so, I think people always try to make things more complex by like, buying all sorts of like crazy stuff or making it more complicated. Like especially if you're just getting started, just get your money in something that's like simple and low fee and let it grow. Don't like move stuff around. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So using simplicity, even though you have the ability and the means to be able to play around and also have been burnt by playing around like, oh, I'm gonna get this one stock and it goes poorly.
Right. Sears Canada at 20 grand. If I put that in an index fund, it'd probably be 40 grand now. Right.
All right. Now we are approaching what I like to call the final round. So no, that's not what we're calling it. Now we are approaching what I like to call the final sprint. I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you and you answer however you see fit. Are you ready?
I will do my best. This sounds terrifying, but I'll try.
It's really hard.
Okay.
You got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Probably a poke bowl, or I would invest it in an ETF.
Because in San Diego, a poke bowl costs $20.
If I can even get a poke, I was worried that a poke bowl would be over 20.
It might be. It might be.
I might be able to buy a small one.
It's okay. You can move to Texas. Your money goes way further.
It's true.
Most meaningful gift you've ever received?
Once when I went on a trip, I came back and my bike had the tires replaced, and someone I'd been riding the same bike, which I still have, that I got in college. It's now 20 some years old. And someone knew that like the tires were like totally run bare and had like replaced the tires on my bike. It was like so nice.
Oh, was it a stranger or was it someone you knew?
It was a friend.
Okay.
I guess
random acts of kindness.
Like really, like, that bike over there that I don't know who owns it. Could you get some new tires? I was a friend.
Right. These tires suck. I'm going to get you some new ones.
Yeah.
All right. Your worst money habit.
Oh, my worst money habit. That's tough. I'm probably getting pretty lazy with the budget these days. It's probably my budget. I still just naturally am relatively frugal. And so I don't like just feel a need for Ferraris and stuff. But then, I just kind of like spend and I have enough now where like even my investments will be able to pay. So yeah, I'd say I don't really watch my budget very carefully. I just spend freely on food and stuff, but that's not that bad either. I don't know. Maybe I can get back to you on that one.
Best money habit,
investing early and often. I have all my investments in their accounts. I leave them there. I don't touch them. During the pandemic of 2020, I didn't make any trades. During our current Russia-Ukraine crisis, as horrific as that is, it's not an excuse to like start timing the market and jumping in and out. I leave all my investments in, let them grow. It's served me extremely well. From the moment I quit I got paid $2 million myself in my company, my net worth is now 4.5 million, not from getting rich on another company or any clever moves, just from leaving my investments in index funds and letting them grow.
I love it. I love it. It's simple, but it works. Why are you not worried about people knowing about your millionaire status?
I don't know. I think if I had kids, I might feel differently. There's a lot of millionaires out there. I think technically I'm only in not even in the 1%. At 4.5 million, I think you need more like 8 million to be in the 1%. I don't know if there's some psycho out there who's going to stalk me and want to steal my money. Like, I think I'm like okay with that level of risk as like a childless dude or whatever. I think most people are good. I think I'm technologically savvy enough to not let myself get hacked. Nothing bad has come of it yet. Like since the day I sold my company, I didn't really have people coming out of the woodwork or anything shaking me down for money. I mean, also, before I sold my company, when you tell someone you own a company, I don't really think they know what that means. Like maybe they already thought I was rich or, whatever. So my life hasn't actually changed that much.
I like it.
And also, here's the real reason. Well, I guess you asked why I was worried, but not why I'm worried. But the reason I do it is because I want to remove the faux pas around talking about money. It's in the US, it's so people don't want to say how much they make or how much debt they have or even how they invest and so I'm just setting an example being like, hey, I post my bank account to Instagram. There it is. There's my investments. This is what one dude who has millions of dollars does. I don't buy insurance scams. I don't, day trade crypto. Like I don't do a lot of, this is it. I think that transparency, I think helps people feel empowered to like make good choices for themselves.
I love it. Yeah, I think it is a really important thing to be able to just, like you said, share transparently and allow people to get a look into what they don't know and where they're making assumptions, because there's so much comparison happening in the world, and comparison wrong, because like I said, they're assuming what they don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Beach volleyball. I love it. It's like the most fun I have in the world. I live 12 minutes from the beach and I coach high school beach volleyball. And all you need to play beach volleyball is you need sunglasses, shorts, and a water bottle. Someone else will have a ball. You just show up and there's no marginal cost. It's amazing. It's like the most fun I have on earth. It's the best. I'm
here for it. All right. Last but not least, something that you want to improve about your personal finances in the upcoming year.
I want to do better with my business. I've been growing an audience and it's been great, but I feel like, that's not really personal. It's like business finance. I don't know. I have to answer that question because my personal finances are fine.
You can totally improve your business. So what's the action item to improve?
I think just like growing the audience more, we're so fortunate that we have an audience and it's doing well, but I just want to keep I feel there's so many people who need to hear this message. Like you and I kind of live this world, like 98% of the population doesn't ever hear about talking about debt or talking about investing and all that stuff. And so I just would love to keep growing the audience and reaching those people.
I love it. All right. We have made it to the finish line. Here is your gold medal. You are standing on the podium at the Worth Listening podcast stadium. Yeah, we have a whole stadium now because I get to make up the rules here. Go ahead and stand on that podium and shout yourself out. This is kind of like the equivalent of the national anthem playing, except for it's your anthem. How can we support you? What do you have coming up? Where can we find you? All that stuff. Tell us.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Jeremy Schneider and my brand is Personal Finance Club. Most of the magic happens on Instagram at Personal Finance Club or personalfinanceclub.com. I'm on the Tickety Talks, got a YouTube channel. You can Google me. Pretty easy guy to find. So if you want to like or subscribe, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Jeremy, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lauryn. It's been a pleasure and an honor.